Welcome back, Cutoffs and Coffee, episode 18. Today's guest, Coach Tyler Miller, a coach who I go back with, who was one of my first coaches in weightlifting, one of my first strength coaches out of college when I was playing professional football. And James and I got into this conversation wanting to talk about programming, working with high school athletes, what they need, the best rep schemes, the best sets, the best exercises to give them. And early on in the conversation, we realized that it is not about that. Coach Miller talks a lot about culture and community, and he really thinks that's the most important part of the weight room. So we kind of dive into the mental side of training. We dive into leadership. We dive into the conversations that coaches and athletes should be having with one another. And this really ended up being something completely different than we went in with the plan of listening to. But I think this was much better than talking sets and reps and numbers. So I really think you'll enjoy episode 18 here with Coach Tyler Miller.
And as always, this podcast is brought to you by Underdog Fitness. And today we're featuring the Resistance Band, the band you need to take everywhere with you. So if you need to catch a pump before you walk into the gym, which most people do, you don't know it, but that's what we do. We hit a couple bicep curls with the Resistance Band in the parking lot, and then we walk in with a pump. So Underdog Resistance Band, the green one and the black one, depending on how you want to get pumped up. But Underdog Fitness, as always.
Hey, if you like what we're doing on here, support the podcast, like, subscribe, comment, let us know who you want to hear. Thank you for listening. Once again, here we go. Coach Tyler Miller, along with CT and Coach James, episode 18 of Cutoffs and Coffee. All right, here we go. If you're watching the YouTube version, you may think that the new name of the show is Cutoffs, Coffee, and Beards. You got our guest today, Tyler Miller, rocking an insane beard. James a little further along, and then me in very, very low kind of infant stage of the beers. But Coach, welcome. We've been talking about you for a long time. Ready to have you on the podcast. How you doing today?
I'm doing well. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. I want to start by asking this. We, a lot of people before they come onto the show, or when we kind of put posts that we're gonna have people that we're gonna talk to, they go straight to Google, do a quick Google search, find you on Instagram, do an Instagram search. But we want to know one thing that you think the listeners should know about you, or we should know about you, that we can't find just from a quick Instagram search.
Oh man, is this like a secret thing, or is it like two truths and a lie? That's the deal.
And then we have to decide.
Then you guys got to figure it out.
Yeah.
I wrestle alligators. I flip cabers. And I've been skydiving. Two truths and a lie. Sorry, two lies and a truth.
Two lies and a truth.
Yeah.
You got too big to skydive, too big to jump out of a plane. I think you've wrestled a gator before.
James?
What was the second thing you said? I've never heard of that before, so I'm assuming that's what it is that you do. Flip what? What do you flip?
Flip cabers. Highland Games.
I think that's what you do. You flip capers.
That's the one.
The beard was a giveaway.
Yep.
Yeah, and the hair, right? Hair's pulled back?
Yes.
What a monster.
So
look at this guy.
They compete in the Highland Games at the Arnold. Have you ever been to the Arnold to compete in the Highland Games there?
No, I've never done it professionally.
Okay.
Just on the amateur circuit. Just one of those things I like doing. My track and field background in college lends itself well to not really having to train all that hard and spend my time being a dad and husband and coach, and be able to go out and compete at a respectable level in my eyes. So makes me feel good about life.
And now you were a shot put athlete back in the day when you were competing.
Yep.
What was some of the favorite parts about you throwing a shot put? Because we've trained a good amount of track and throwers in our day, and they're always the most intense athletes when it comes to how they take their training. What were some of the favorite parts that you had about training for shot?
Honestly, the people, the culture and community is just, it's very much like the strength sports, where I want to beat you for sure. I definitely want to beat you, but I want to beat you on your best day. So I'm cheering for you at the same time. And so there's this camaraderie in all of the strength sports, I think, that's, we're all doing the same stuff. Strength and conditioning, we're all working hard. We respect the grind that everybody else is putting in. And so it's just like this big family reunion whenever you get back together with people and go have fun throwing heavy things.
Yeah, I always remember watching my sister throw and thinking, why is everybody such good friends? Why is everybody such good buddies?
Yeah.
And I guess I should have just asked her, because I never asked her like that. It's good to hear from you. Take us back a little bit. Take us back, growing up, and then getting to school and being a competitive thrower, and then opening a gym, and then to where you are now. Kind of talk us through and let us know how you got to the place you're in now.
Yeah. So I was growing up, I was going to be a professional football player. I was too slow to be a linebacker, too small to be a lineman. So didn't quite work out for me. I was a better thrower. I played everything growing up. Golf. I mean, the only thing I didn't do in a kind of formal setting is wrestle. And so I did all the youth sports that I could in a formal, kind of as formal as youth sports are. But then I was the ultra rare 2 spring sport varsity letter winner in high school. So I baseball and track and field. Broke my wrist playing football my senior year, so I couldn't swing a baseball bat. And so I did both sports my junior year, and then lettered in both. And then senior year, I couldn't swing a baseball bat, so I went out and threw full time, and ended up earning myself a track scholarship. So that's how I ended up at Purdue. Thrower, shot, disc, and hammer at Purdue. 5-year guy there. Had my sophomore year, I had knee surgery my junior year, so I redshirted my sophomore year. Shoulder surgery my junior year, so had some things to overcome there, and that has ultimately helped me immensely from a training standpoint and a coaching standpoint. Obviously not the setbacks you want to experience as an athlete, but very much appreciate that now that I'm on this side of it. Because you're always, as a coach, you're always dealing with dings and nicks and all the things that hurt. So definitely has helped me on that level. So yeah, that's through college. And then graduated in 2008, went back, got my master's degree 2009 to 2011, and was a graduate assistant at Purdue. Jim Lathrop was my strength coach in college. He offered me a graduate assistantship and brought me under his wing, and very, very grateful for the opportunity that I had there. Most GAs at that level don't get the opportunity to take a team and run with it. They're kind of the understudy and get to do a lot of that stuff. But we had a very small staff for the Big Ten at that time. There were only 4 full-time head strength coach and assistants at that time. So I got to take 4 or 5 teams and just run with it. So it was a pretty cool opportunity to be able to do that at a Big Ten Division I university as a GA, coming in my first year, having Division I athletes that, here you go, you're responsible for. So it was pretty cool.
Throw you into the fire.
Yep. And the athletes. So I was, as a thrower and a football player in high school, it's very much bigger, faster, stronger. Everything's lifting heavy, getting as big and strong and powerful as you can, to suddenly I'm working with the cheerleading team, the divers on the swim and dive program. So a completely different, the soccer program, girls soccer. So a completely different experience that I just got thrown into as a Division I strength and conditioning coach from my personal experience as an athlete. So that opened my eyes and made me realize I didn't know anywhere close to what I thought I knew very, very quickly. So that was, I'm not sure I would have done well if I was allowed the opportunity to just think I knew things.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a good kick in the nuts to get me started on my career and open my eyes a little bit to the fact that I've got some stuff to learn.
You're saying the books didn't teach you that, huh?
No.
Something
I thought I read all
James
the
and I talk
books
about all
and
the time.
do all the things.
Yeah. All right. So working with the cheerleading squad, getting a little bit out of your comfort zone. What was the next step for you after Purdue?
Yeah. So after I graduated 2011, we actually saw the coaching carousel go around at the Division I university, and had the football staff turnover, and then the strength and conditioning staff turnover. So got to see that firsthand, and that was part of the reason that I started thinking about getting out and opening my own business, because I wanted to, have a little bit more authority in my own career decisions than having people who don't necessarily know, they know their football program, but kind of the politics around that. I wanted to be able to have a little more authority for my family, for myself. Met my wife during that time at Purdue, so that started changing my concept of life a little bit as well. So that's when I started thinking about it. Went into a personal training facility that catered specifically to 50 and older adults after that. Worked pretty closely with some physical therapists that they had there in West Lafayette. And again, talk about a 180 in a career move, going from Big Ten Division I athletes to teaching fall proof classes to little old ladies. So it was another. I was a little bit more receptive to that one because I had already had the giant kick in the nuts with the diving program and the people doing flips and twists in the air and stuff like that. So, yeah, so it was catered to 50 and older adults, people just trying to be fit, healthy, and in shape. And that was where I really realized that I didn't just want to work with athletes. I wanted to work with people who really appreciated me being there, right? So a lot of times athletes, it's I have to go to practice, I have to do what coach tells me, that kind of mentality. And in between there, I did one track season at a high school right after graduating college, so was kind of turned off to the high school mentality at that point because of the amount of have to that was there. So when I was in the 50 and older community, they were very appreciative of the fact that I was there sharing my knowledge and holding them accountable, and they were excited to be there. And they're paying money, right? And so that was kind of the difference between Division I kids that expect you to be there because coach has to be there to run the session. Maybe I don't like coach today and he's going to make us do some hard things, to a little bit different mentality, a little bit softer, more appreciative side. So at that time, that was, I kind of realized, like, I want to find a way to blend these things together. And the place I was working at that time was, I offered to buy a squat rack. I offered to bring in, the heaviest thing we had in the gym was 50-pound dumbbells. And I had, parents who were like, hey, can you train my kid? You know a lot of things about sports. Can you train my kid? I was like, well, I can't really, because your kid's too strong for this place. So at that time, I knew I kind of had to blend some things together and figure out what I was going to do with that. And so the CrossFit world was kind of blowing up at that point, back in the late 2000s, early 2010s. So looked into that a little bit. Didn't really want to go that route because it seemed like a little bit different culture than I wanted to get into. I wanted to be a little bit more specific, and not that you can't do that with CrossFit. You obviously can. Every CrossFit's kind of got its own vibe to it, but so that's where Force Barbell was born.
Yeah. And that's where we met at Force Barbell. And what I remember a lot about that and about your specific skill set is that you were working, you kind of told us how you built this level of knowledge, but you were working with athletes, I mean, 8 to 80 years old. And I was always so fascinated because I had just gotten into it years before, and I had started in group fitness, and James started as a PE teacher. And so we kind of had our specific groups we were training, but it was so fascinating to me that we would 1 hour, be in training with first round draft pick in the MLB draft. And then you'd have one of the starting offensive linemen for the Titans. And then you have an adult fit class that had, like you mentioned, 50 plus was the age group for that. What was that like to work with so many different groups of people in such a small amount of time over such a long amount of time? I mean, what did it take? What did you need to have to be able to be successful in a situation like that?
A whole lot of grit and determination. I'm like the ADD kid. I was the kid that was always getting in trouble in class and needed entertained, right? So it was, everybody in business says you got to create your niche. You got to create your niche. And I've always said I'm the anti-niche guy, right? Like the principles apply across the board. It doesn't matter who you are. The principles of human physiology and creating physical adaptations applies. It doesn't matter who you are. The barbell doesn't lie, right? Mm-hmm. And so the not niche thing always scratched my itch for the novelty of it, while also allowing me to work the same 80 to 100 hours a week over and over and over again for, I didn't take a vacation. We had our national meets that we went to and contests and stuff like that we would take athletes to, but and so my family I would always bring my wife and kids along to that kind of stuff, but those were always working vacations, right? It was never a true vacation. So it allowed me to work. It allowed me to stay intrigued and always have like a new thing, a new problem to solve, a new person coming in the door. And so it really, that I was always a curious kid that got in trouble for taking the remote control apart and trying to put it back together and that kind of stuff. So it just always kind of fed my curiosity, and it just kept it fresh and exciting.
What were some of and I guess the listeners don't quite know this part of the story yet, and we'll get into it, but what were some of the biggest traits that you took out of what you were doing at Force and were able to enter into what you're doing now at the high school level?
I think it's the same stuff. Culture and community are really the biggest pieces of what I'm trying to teach here. We've got a lot of kids that it's me, right? What do I need? What do I need? What do I need? And so, well, how can you support the kid next to you, right? And teaching them how to teach other people. And so, honestly, probably the intern program where I was taking college kids and teaching them how to teach the people around them has been a huge advantage, because I'm teaching high school kids how to be my interns, because I don't have enough eyes in the room with me and a co-teacher and 65 kids. There's no chance for a coach to get around and make sure everybody's doing what they need to do, the way they need to do it, how they need to do it exactly right. So teaching those kids that are leaders to be excellent leaders and make sure that the people around them are elevating themselves as well.
Yeah, let's talk about a little bit now. So much success at Force, and then you decide to uproot the family. You decide to move. You decide to get into the high school. level of training. Talk us through the process. What was that like from, finishing up at the gym and then taking everything back to your hometown to where you're at now?
Yeah. So back in 2019, my grandfather passed away in November, and I grew up right next door to my grandparents. My parents still live right next door to my grandma. And that was kind of the realization that, like, I really haven't been around. Like, my parents have been great about coming down to Indy. It's 2.5 hours north of where we were. My parents were great about coming down, having us up. We were, we always did the travel back and forth thing really well, but it was once a month, once every other month, at the holidays, that kind of stuff. And it was kind of my first realization that since I moved away to go to college, I really hadn't spent a lot of time and I really appreciated the time that I had with my family and growing up right next door to my grandparents, and the opportunities to be around my grandparents and learn from them, and that my cousins didn't have because they weren't quite as nearby. Grandpa passing away in 2019 was kind of my first, like, that's an interesting thought, moving back home. And then the pandemic hit. We shut down our doors for, I think it was a month and a half, 2 months, something like that. Had our clients come in, take our equipment out of the gym, take it home with them, put it in their garage, put it in their basement, put it wherever they need, so we could drive them programs and keep them training through the pandemic. And so sitting there in the gym, going to work every day, but really not having a whole lot of work to do, and other than write some programs and send them out. I get an email from the NSCA, job board posting, and I never, because of where I'm at, I never look at it. And for some reason I clicked it, and the job was Goshen High School, or the top one was Goshen High School. And I was like, whoa. Like, I knew that so it's the strength and conditioning position that my strength coach had, and he was here for 37 years, and just retired. And it was like, I knew he was going to be retiring, but for whatever reason, all that coming to that point was just like, is this that moment? Like, is that what this is? So talked to Brittany about it, prayed about it. Yeah, I'm going to, throw my name in the ring and see what happens. So they ended up hiring me, and we moved back just over a year ago. So it's been a complete 180 from a clientele, going back to what I was talking about earlier with the have to versus, kids coming in and paying us at Force Barbell. Everybody was motivated because they wouldn't be paying us if they weren't motivated. To now having every kind of kid on the planet. We're in a low income area, 70% free reduced lunch. So a lot of our kids have a very tough home life and not a lot of support. So really it's a complete 180 from that standpoint. So it's been a lot of patience learning and relationship building, and just really getting to the core of what kids are looking to get out of it, and being, in a lot of ways, being a father figure, being I think every coach is that to some degree, but some of the conversations I have with kids it's like, whoa, that's tough. I don't really know what to say,
Yeah.
Do you want to train today? Like, what?
Yeah.
Rough, man. So here we go, if you want it.
I'll tell you what I'm really interested about in that setting. And I say this because James is one of the first and only coaches I'd ever been around who, in a world where you can jump online and get a program, you can pay $30 a month and you get a coach right there at your fingertips. James is one of the only coaches who I've seen be able to consistently have athletes return year after year after year. So he's had to get creative when it comes to programming. He's had to get creative when it comes to training. It can't be, the toughest 4 weeks of a training program and then you kind of let them go and then they figure something else out. You're now in a situation, coach, where you get an athlete when they come in at 14, 15 years old. And now your mindset has to be, okay, I'm training this kid at least for the next 4 years as we're freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors. And then, possibly depending on their future, what the future looks like. What are some of the things that you look at, and we'll start super young, when an athlete first comes in and you want to assess them and give them the best program, give them the best movements for them and their age and their situation? What are some of the things that you look at when you're starting to put like the base in the beginning of this, let's call it a 4-year program together? What are some of those things that you look at that help you make decisions and kind of push you in the right direction?
So that's one thing that I think I always did at Force Barbell that maybe drove people a little bit bonkers, but I think a lot of people appreciated was I was never coaching for the short-term program. I was always looking for the same long-term benefit. I wanted the 10-year program. Even if I'm not going to be that guy, I wanted to set you up for whoever that guy was going to be, to have the long-term approach. And so, going back to your question earlier, I think that's one of the things that I brought here that's allowed me to be successful. And the number one thing, I kind of have this pyramid, and I think most people start at the hard work, which is, for me, the middle tier of the pyramid. So for me, my base is posture and stability. Can you hold posture? Can you hold stability? Are you a strong and stable person with good posture? Then the next tier up is movement quality around good posture. And so that's kind of the foundation that I think a lot of, and this is where I think CrossFit probably gets a bad rap, because there's a lot of CrossFit coaches that are taking care of posture and positioning and that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of strength and conditioning, CrossFit, whoever, you name it, that just jump right into that hard work tier. How heavy can we lift? How many reps can we do? How many this, how much that? And for me, everything's posture and position. So the first thing I do, so this is my second year. My first year here, the first semester was spent, we got 2 weeks in person. Then we had 6 or 7 weeks that we were all online, and I'm in a 7,000 square foot weight room with, YouTube videos playing for kids in their living room on Zoom calls, much like this. So last year it was really a crapshoot whether we got anything done or not. This year, I feel really good because I can tell we got a lot of stuff done and implemented last year, even though it was such a screwy year with all the COVID pandemic stuff. But the first 4 or 5 weeks, literally the start of every training session was universal athletic position. And I made them talk about the uniform, from the floor up, what's the universal athletic position? Feet shoulder width apart, feet flat, feet shoulder width apart, knees bent, knees over toes, butt back, tall, flat, neutral spine, shoulders over knees, over and over and over again. And they just held that position. And a year ago, first semester, while we were still here, one of the first things I did was get the functional movement screen scores. And our functional movement screen a year ago was, I think we had an average score of like 10.1, 10.2 for all of our 300 kids that were in my class. And it was marginally higher than that when I took out all the kids who were non-athletes. So it was like might have been like 10.1 versus 10.3. So like our athletes weren't moving well. Our non-athletes were definitely not moving well, but a lot of them sat around for, 6-8 months, whatever the pandemic,
Right.
before I did that. So it's, they weren't exactly set up very well for success during that time frame. But we just didn't move well. We couldn't hold posture. We couldn't hold positions. And so that was kind of my first order of business, was get these kids to a place where they could hold good positions and then build range of motion around it.
Spent weeks on that.
Weeks.
They
hated it. They hated it.
I can imagine.
So we had, I literally just walked them through it, and the first 10 minutes of our warm up, they're just holding a universal athletic position. Stop, reset, say it again. Didn't say it right. Said it out of order. Stop, reset. Who wants to say it? Who wants to lead? And they're just holding it for 30 seconds at a time, 45 seconds at a time, a minute at a time. So this year they're moving way better this year than they were last year. I've got a tier system, so in order to progress into higher level skills, you have to first hit these 4 foundational skills. You got to be able to front squat. You got to be able to do a RDL hip hinge pattern. You got to be able to do an eccentric push-up without your core breaking down. And what's the other one? Oh, you got to be able to do a strict press overhead. And if you can't, if your overhead is shoulders tight, locked out, you can't, if any of that, your movement quality or posture sucks, you don't get to do higher level skills. Last year, I think we had like 60% of our athletes were on the level 1 program the first time we tested. This year, we're probably at 30%. So it's better, right? We're getting there. As much as my impatient, I want it now mentality, I want the results. I want to win championships. I want to do everything yesterday. So, as much as it drives me nuts sometimes that we can't go faster, we're getting there.
Do you work crawls, ISO holds, jumps, landing, things like that in that early kind of stage 1 of all that?
Yep. Yeah, so it's basically universal athletic position, those 4 basic movement patterns that I talked about, and then we're doing bear crawls, we're doing work capacity stuff, just trying to build an engine.
Now, having a very unique background from 8-year-olds, 8-year-olds, like CT was saying. And having, a good amount of time spent with experience in your career, what were some things, or what would be some things, let's say, flashback 10 years ago and you have this job, what are some things that you would tell yourself 10 years earlier if you're going into this job as a younger strength coach, saying, hey, these are the things that I would have screwed up if I was a newer coach to this environment?
So really, like I said, patience, control, right? So I was not ready for this setting 10 years ago at all. Like the younger version of me would have come in here and pissed everybody off and been pissed off all the time. These kids don't get it, blame rather than leadership and taking ownership of it. And seeing how my approach, the seeing the feedback, right? So if my approach didn't work, I would have blamed these kids, their culture, they don't get it, whatever. And now it's like, it may take me some time to process that feedback, but the feedback is, okay, that didn't work, right? It may take me 3 weeks to figure out that didn't work, but today I'm able to see, okay, that conversation didn't work. What conversation do I need to have with that kid? How do I need to approach that kid? Maybe it's a different conversation. Maybe I'm trying to force something down his throat when he just needs somebody to love him up a little bit. And so really, you don't know everything that's going on, and you think you know, but you have no idea. You can't make assumptions about people and about things, and really take ownership and get to the heart of the matter and figure it out. And that takes a lot of patience. That takes extra work. That takes some introspection and looking at yourself, that I'm not sure I know I wasn't ready for 10 years ago.
That, self-reflection as a coach is so key. And I think you dropped a couple bombs there in terms of, like, we typically want to blame somebody other than us. Are there ways that you work that into, like, teaching that lesson to the athletes? Because they're, receiving information from a whole bunch of other places other than you. What are some of those things that you feel you can really help communicate kids? You said iron never lies. I love that saying. How are some ways that you communicate that to your athletes?
So, for instance, today I spent pretty much the entire day teaching leadership, right? It was, so the way our Wednesdays work, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, we've got a block schedule. So Monday and Tuesday is the same training program for an hour and a half. Thursday, Friday is the same training program for an hour and a half with different sets of kids each day. Wednesday, we have every class. So by the time they get into the locker room, get changed, get the training session done, get to the locker room and get changed, we got about 35, 40 minutes to get some stuff done. So the way our weight room's set up, we don't necessarily we've got 8 stations for our big core lifts. We got 8 squat racks, 8 platforms, 8 bench presses. And with the number of kids we have, it's just not set up for us to get core lifts in or anything like that. So Wednesdays are kind of our auxiliary circuits, or our auxiliary lift day, and we do it in a big circuit. So we're doing 3 sets, 3 rounds of everything, 30 seconds at a time, 40 seconds at a time, rotating on the minute and that kind of thing. And in order to get that done with a group of 65 kids, everybody's got to communicate. The clock's going, hey, we got 5 seconds in order to get everybody on time, to the next station. And so basically the statement today was, everybody raise your hand really high. I am a leader. Repeat after me. I am a leader. So everybody repeats after me. I am a leader. Who's responsible for this training session? I am. Right? Who's responsible for your neighbor's training session? I am. Who's responsible for the kid over in the corner that you don't even know? I am. And so if somebody's not at their station on time, who's responsible for that? I am. Right? And so everybody, so who's running this training session? They are. And so in order to do it well, they've got to communicate. Even if it's kids they don't know, they got to communicate. Even if it's, kids they don't like, they got to communicate. And everybody's one big team, right? So you got to build relationships. You got to go out and connect with that kid that you don't know. If that kid's late, everybody's late, we're all doing burpees. And so, this is our 8th week of school, and we're still doing some burpees. And it's better now than, today we got through 3 rounds of the circuit for 3 of our classes, 2 rounds for the other classes, and we got some burpees done. But that conversation is always being had. Where are you at mentally? How are you approaching that barbell? What's going on in between your ears? Because that's going to manifest itself with that barbell. If you think it's heavy, it's going to feel heavy, right? If you know you can do it, you're going to hit it. And so, that's that. You got to get that in between the ears.
There's a lot to unpack there. Kind of going into that. I have this saying stuck in the back of my head: is we encourage what we tolerate. You have clear standards and expectations for your athletes. They don't always meet those expectations, correct, which is fine. But there's a consequence. And it's not your fault. It's their responsibility to meet their expectations. Do you have opportunities to build in those that dialogue when you're creating those expectations and laying them out to allow the athletes to participate in that process?
Yes, and it can be overwhelming. And so a lot of times kids are like, there's a lot to unpack with that conversation. What did he just say? And so we're still getting there. We're still getting there. So I know it's an overwhelming conversation, and I think when we arrive at that point, this thing will basically run itself and we'll win championships all the time.
And that's an unintended outcome.
What's that?
And that's like an unintended. We talk a lot about intended outcomes and unintended outcomes. That's almost an unintended outcome of setting the culture and laying the foundations.
No, that is the intended outcome, right? And so that is very much the intended outcome. The process to get there, I don't care what it looks like. And so I kind of backwards to the way I set the big vision, and then I screw it up a lot and make mistakes along the way and take that feedback and adjust, and whatever it looks like at the end of the day to get us there, that's what it's going to look like. So it's almost backwards of that. It's the process itself is, I could care less what it looks like. The fact, so my mission is that I'm here to empower faithful servant leaders, right? And so I'm here to empower faithful servant leaders who can create intentional results. All right, so if they want to win championships, let's go win championships. We're going to screw it up along the way. We're going to fail forward. We're going to do everything we need to do. And we're going to do everything we thought we needed to do first, figure out that that's not what we needed to do, and then fail forward and move on to what actually works. Tweak the process, tweak it, change it, make up our mind in a different way, and just keep seeing that feedback and get there.
Yeah, but I think, and James, correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying that they take these conversations and they use them in their everyday lives. They then, grow as individuals. They're better in their relationships. They're better at home. When they get out of school, hopefully they're better grown-ups. Hopefully they're better, parents, and hopefully they're better grandchildren, and they grandparents, and they remember all of these conversations that they had with Coach Tyler in the gym. And I think it's almost that they remember that even more than, winning the championship or working with a team and being able to accomplish goals together. I had just finished talking to James about right before we got on that one of the things that I remember, and I hold these memories that I hold so dear to my heart when I remember our time together, was every time I left the gym, I learned something. I went in with the intent of training as hard as I possibly could to become a better athlete. What I left was a better human being, a kinder human being, a more knowledgeable individual, a better son, a better brother, because you were having these conversations. I mean, back then, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And so I think that's what James is getting by, unintended outcomes is winning the championship. Gotcha. I think that's great, right. But it also, you become such a better human being from those conversations. Right. And I think that's something that we're missing in this space. I don't think enough people are having those conversations.
Yeah. And I guess I understand it now, what you were saying better. Yes. So both of those things are intended outcomes. My biggest thing is, so my intended outcome is that I create champions, and most people think of champions as the noun, right? The person or the team that won. So for me, a champion is the verb. What does it mean to champion something, right? So it's to take a purpose and take a militant stand for it. And so I'm taking a militant stand for my kids. I'm taking a militant stand for my kids, for their families, for whatever it is that they want to see themselves have in life. And so that's what I mean. My purpose, my intended outcome is to create the faithful servant leader who is a champion, but who knows how to champion.
And you have a roadmap, you get everybody on a bus and you're driving it to championships. That's where you're going. I think the direction is clear with that. And I think, that idea of, what does it take to champion something is very translatable to other life skills.
Yeah.
And you've seen it, being able to have experiences in different clinics. When you see it, and when you see it, from an athlete click, what are some of those memories that you have of working with an athlete and all of a sudden they take that championship mentality towards their work? What are some of those favorite memories that you've had with that process? And you can't use CT as an example.
CT never got it, so
I'm still trying to figure it out.
I mean, honestly, I'm a fairly present guy, and so I look back with fond memories, but like what I'm doing now, wherever I'm at, that's usually where I'm at. So like last night, our girls soccer program just won a conference championship. 3 days ago, the kid he was my first kid to buy in here at Goshen High School, spent every morning before school last year in the weight room, coming in during class during the day. Tennis player, just all conference tennis player, tennis program just won a conference championship. So, I mean, just seeing those kids here who a year ago I was like, man, this is tough. Like we got some tough situations around here, and just seeing them overcome some odds and work their tails off over the summer, and come in COVID, right? Like these kids weren't even training in the weight room a year ago because of COVID. And so the fact that they've stuck to it and continued to play their games and be passionate about the things that they're passionate about and show up. I mean, it's just cool to see it. It's inspiring to me. I had 3 conversations today with kids who were talking about, some of the stuff that they're doing and how this has helped them. And they say thank you to me, and I'm like, no, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for like continuing to show up and push through and do some of the things you're doing.
Is it the program that you've got them on that's success for that's leading to success, or is it this culture and community that you're building and the program's just there to help?
Program's just there. I mean, if you get I could give kids the worst training program on the planet, and if they buy in and work their tails off, they're going to find a way to get stuff done, right? If they're intentional about getting stuff done, they're going to get stuff done. And so having that culture, to me, trumps everything. Culture is, I don't know who says it, but there's a quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture eats strategy for breakfast. I mean, strategy doesn't have a chance if people don't buy in.
Yeah, I've never heard that. I don't eat a ton of breakfast, but if I did, yeah.
That CT double biceps getting a little thin.
Okay. Now I'm gonna go train right after this, and my heart hurts from that.
And I've been sitting here thinking, man, how do I get my shoulders to fill up my video screen? Because
you gotta sit.
You got some stacked
closer.
shoulders.
Sit closer.
Okay.
I want to know too about it. We talked a little about stress. You know, we don't know where they're coming from. We don't know what's going on in their daily life. Is there a way that you can, I know you had the conversations, but is there a way that you can measure kind of stress on the individual? Obviously, assuming they've obviously got a ton of extra stress anyway, but is there a way that you level stress and how you kind of decide on the training daily based upon that?
You know, at Force Barbell, it was a whole lot easier because I was there with the people that were training and I could see them every day. And having eyes on people, you can see if they're stressed because, you know, 70% looks like 70% if they're not stressed. 70% looks like 95% if they're stressed. And so when you have the capacity, you know, I had 120 clients at Force Barbell, and they were coming in, you know, multiple days a week. They were coming in all day long, and I was there for most of it. And so it was a whole lot easier in that setting than having 300 plus kids who are all packed into seven classes. So it's a whole lot. I don't know that I've found the strategy that works here. I have felt at times like I'm running a very average strength and conditioning program, and that's probably partly true and partly perception of mine based on my experience of how I've done things in the past and the level of success that I've been around. I'm really not running a high school strength and conditioning program here. And so it's kind of cool. And at the same time, I feel like I've got a lot of work to do on my end to figure out those strategies so that I can get eyes on kids and get that feedback while I'm coaching kids to see, is that load too heavy? Is that load too light? You know, I'm prescribing workouts, but it's basically all RPE and feel at this point because we just got our training software. You know, I've been here for a year. We didn't have any training software. Any amount of tracking that they did was all on paper last year. So the data points weren't there. So this year I've got some training software. I'm using Team Builder now, and the data that I'm getting and the reports that I can run and that kind of stuff is pretty cool to see. And I'm very excited about being able to use that to be smarter about things moving forward. But I don't know that I have a really clear answer to that other than, you know, really just paying attention and trying to get my eyes on as many lifts as possible and seeing what they look like while they're training.
I think RPE is so interesting too. And sorry to interrupt you there, James, because something that I'm consistently working through as we're working with younger athletes is a lot of these athletes think they're at a 7, they're 8, they're at a 9, but it's really a 3 or a 4. They just don't have the reps and they haven't been able to kind of even work up to the point where they've got the output of something that would be hard for them. Do you have any techniques, any tips outside of what we've talked about to kind of help with the conversation with that athlete and trying to figure out what 80%, what 90% really feels like?
Yeah. So the way I've programmed it this fall so far is we did kind of a progressive 3x5, 3x4, 3x3, and then after that, 2 burnout sets. And so those burnout sets is where I really got kids to figure out what heavy felt like. So I had 2 weeks of 3x5. They're supposed to work to a near 5 rep max. And many of them, like you said, don't have a clue what, they think they're doing near 5 rep max until I come over on their, so 3x5 followed by 2 sets of 8 to 12. If you can get to 12, it's too light. If you can't get to 8, it's too heavy. Figure it out, right? And that's not just a, oh, I did my 8 and like, that was hard. It's like, did you die? Were you about to? So a lot of kids started to figure that out during that process, like, oh, that's what and a lot of it was having to keep eyes on them while they're doing it and make sure they realize that was not what I'm looking for. You got to keep going. And so I had a lot of kids that were timid and scared when it came to those heavy, hard RPEs, and their set of 8 to 12 turned into a set of 20 to 25. And then it was like, oh, that's way too light. Got it. Okay, that's what hard feels like, right? Keep going, do another one. And I'm standing, standing right in their ear as they're squatting. Nope, that's not it. Keep going. And they're like looking at me in the mirror over their shoulder like, Coach, you're crazy. It's like the fact that you can have that conversation with me right now tells me, like, that ain't it. Let's go. Mm-hmm. Keep going. So that process helped a lot with figuring out the RPE. The downfall of that then is the kids who do train really hard have had 5 really hard training sessions, or 5 really hard weeks of training sessions, and we're in the middle of football season.
Yeah.
So we're elevating a lot of the kids that we needed to elevate, but at the same time, like, am I beating kids up too bad? I don't know. So that's something I think as we get more data points, it'll be easier for me to put the kids who are getting after it into a certain group with, percentages that are more appropriate, 80, 85%. And then also have those other kids that really need to learn what get after it feels like in a different group. So
it's awesome.
Now, but again, it's like I talk about, like, I'm failing forward at the same time they're failing forward. And so it's, if I have to have everything right, I'm not giving them permission to fail and screw things up either. So, and then I got to take ownership and be open and willing to hear that feedback if it's not something, even if it's a kick in the nuts. So.
Now, we were talking a little bit about, being in the private sector, you're able to control most of what athletes do, and in terms of monitoring stress and the weight room program. Now, you still have that, capability to monitor everything that's going on in terms of, what exercises you're prescribing. One thing that we have to do at T3 is kind of balance what we're doing with what maybe a high school strength and conditioning program is. So a lot of times a kid will come up and say, hey, I lifted twice at my high school. What should I do today? I like to ask, what do you think I want you to do today? What haven't you done this week that I might want you to do for your performance? If we ask one of your athletes who maybe missed a week, hey, what would I want you to do this week that you didn't do yet? What are some of those main components of your training program that those athletes are going to be like, I got to do this, I got to do this, and I got to do this. And that's what, is expected of me to be a top performer.
Yeah. So right now we've got level 1 and level 2 installed. So our level 1 kids are probably going to tell you hang above knee clean, because we do that twice a week, and front squat and bench press. And those are our big, that's what we're testing. That's what we're doing. Our level 2 kids hang above knee power snatch and power cleans from the floor. So we get the hang above knee position with a little bit lighter load, more technically involved. They're more skilled athletes. They've got the positions and posture to do so. So we're adding in a layer there, but squats, back squat, front squat, and bench press. And so it's, I get a lot of questions on, Coach, why don't we do this? Coach, why don't we do that? Why don't we do more conditioning? Why don't we run more? Why don't we stretch more? Because I've got you 2 hour and 20-minute training sessions in one 36-minute training session. Like 3 hours a week isn't going to get me a comprehensive training program. So we're getting the biggest bricks we can. And then from those things, we've got work capacity stations that we layer in 3 or 4 different exercises that are auxiliary lifts, but doing it at a pace that is somewhat unmanageable.
That sounds about right. I do have, Tyler, I want to be respectful of your time here. Got just a couple minutes left. I want to get you home. So Brittany's not upset with you, and most importantly, upset with us. So I got like 5 or 6 questions that I kind of want to fire at you. And then we'll wrap this thing up. So first, what's the future look like for Coach Tyler Miller? What's something you're excited about?
I'm excited about having my kids grow up in a system. You know, I've got 3 kids, right? So Zeke's 6, Evelyn's 2, almost 2, and then got the third one 5 months old. So I'm really excited about being able to build a program here that my kids can grow up and go through, and if they choose to be athletes, right? Like whether they're athletes or not is up to them, but creating something that my kids get to be empowered by and participate in to help them succeed.
That gives us a perfect transition to the next question. What is something you've learned about coaching and training kids since you've had kids that was maybe a little different than before you had children?
You know, so last year with the COVID pandemic, we had a few weeks that I was at home teaching kindergarten to my oldest. And that was like, I really have to hold hands. Like I didn't realize how much patience and hand holding I had to do until I was teaching my 6-year-old kindergarten math, kindergarten I mean, via Zoom calls because we were quarantined at home. And man, the patience that made me aware that I needed to have with high school kids was profoundly useful.
Patience. We still got to make a note of that one, James. We got to put that in the show notes. 2 to go. What to you is the best part of the job? Why do you stay in it?
The feedback, right? The seeing a kid, you know, having a kid a week and a half ago wanted to stick around during our study hall session that I don't have anything going on, stuck around and talked about the difference that I've made for his life, you know, the spark that I was for his fire. When it comes to powerlifting, he wants to be, you know, he's a senior this year, wants to be a powerlifter, didn't understand it. His ego was in the way. This is all stuff that he was saying to me. And it was like, whoa, dude, like there's some rubbing off of the conversation. Like and, you know, seeing, like having those conversations with kids that it's like, is this kid even paying attention? And then a year later have him come back and say some of those things and repeat them back to me in a way that like, this kid understands this stuff way more than I do. Like his intuition about it at 17, 18 years old is profound. And to see that spark and that switch that he's turned on, and then see that rub off on the kids around him, because his whole circle is night and day different compared to last year. So that's the stuff that gets my juices. And, you know, like seeing young CT here growing up and doing podcasts and, you know, all these kids, you know, just seeing the results when a lot of times you don't get to see those results. A lot of times you don't get to see the impact that you make. And a lot of people go through their life and have to wonder, and to see that and get that feedback, it's cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I can speak for a lot of the athletes who've worked with you in the past that, I still communicate all the times with guys that I trained with back then, so many years ago. And it's just still just relationships that we have that were built, by heavy front squats and power cleans and snatches. And that's where, it really brought us together. So I know you're doing an awesome job out there, and
Kettlebell
these
swings,
athletes
T-bar
will.
rows.
Say it again.
Kettlebell swings and T-bar rows.
Holy cow. I got kettlebell swing stories for days. I talk about telling stories to James, kettlebell swing stories, 4x40, 88 kilos. Kids lose their mind. I programmed, I think 25 in our summer programming, and everybody lost their mind. I said, you guys have no idea. You have no idea. And 100 kettlebell swings you had for a challenge, which we had a ton of people complete. I mean, just, we could go on, for another 30 minutes just talking about that. So last one, we always wrap the show up with this question. Kind of imagine every athlete who trains, every coach who trains is listening to the podcast. What is one thing that you think we are missing? It could be a concept, could be an exercise, could just be an idea. What's one big thing that you think we're missing or falling short of in the strength and conditioning community? Yeah, we usually intro it and let people know we're bringing that, and that was one I didn't tell you we were going to bring.
One thing, I don't know what we all are missing. I'll go with what I am missing, or what I have missed in the past that's been kind of profoundly different. I think a lot of times we bring our goals to a situation and don't listen to our clients' goals. I think a lot of times we have the things we want for people and hold them to our expectation rather than finding out what they want for themselves and holding them to their expectation. And I will speak for myself on that. I don't know about the rest of the world out there, but I've definitely ruined some relationships by trying to kind of force my idea of what somebody's capable of on them. And so now I ask, I'm not perfect at it, but I'm a whole lot better at it. And usually kids say they want to be successful, in which case I say, okay, like, it may get uncomfortable for you then, because I'm going to hold you to that. Yeah. And then I give them the option.
You told me that. Yeah.
It's going to be uncomfortable then. Are you sure you want that? Yeah. Okay, cool.
All right, let's do it. Well, is there any place, I know you're on Instagram here and there, any place where people can contact you or people can find you and follow your journey?
Yeah. Currently tgmiller@goshenschools.org is my email address. So if people have questions, or it's funny, you say you're saving my time, and I'm like, I'm just getting started. We could talk about this stuff all night if you wanted to. My wife would get pissed off at me. She's a saint. She actually doesn't get pissed off at me. She allows me to do whatever I want, and she's an amazing woman, and I don't know how she puts up with me. But yeah, I could definitely talk about this stuff all the time. So if people want to shoot me an email, have questions or whatever, tgmiller@goshenschools.org. And yeah, that's where I'm at.
Coach, we so much appreciate the conversation. It's funny, I got on this wanting to talk high school athlete programming, and 5 minutes into the conversation, I realized that it wasn't about that. It's like so much more powerful than that. And I think that's what people are going to get from this. And it's things that James and I have talked about a ton. And it's just so great to hear you reinforce this, and being in that position where you get to influence so many athletes. We really appreciate all the hard work you do, and really looking forward to continuing to see the journey, and then continuing to just see those championships get thrown up on the wall and on the website. And I'm sure you'll share those on Instagram. So good luck to you and good luck to everybody. Want to thank everybody for listening. It's something we always wrap up with, and I'm so passionate about this too when I say this, is please, everybody, continue to practice gratitude. Tell the people that you love them, and always remember to live life stimulated. Coach, thanks for being on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
Thanks.